Tom Clark's 6M podcast is a Boink Studios production. And now, on with the show. Hey, what is up? Welcome to Tom Clark's 6M podcast. I'm your host, Tom Clark, and in this episode, I'm joined by co-host Phil Lindsey. Film franchises. Brother, if you know the 6M podcast, you know that we know a thing or two about film franchises, baby. We've done a bunch of them. Marvel's in the title of the show, as you can well see, but man, we've done others as well. We've done sequels, we've done prequels, I think, trilogies, 4 in a row, 5 in a row, 9 in a row. Not really, but shared universe, you name it, man, we've done it. And guess what? We haven't even scraped the surface, man, because for as many cool movies as we've talked about here in the 6M and film franchises there are to dive into, guess what? There's probably just as many and maybe a lot more that we still have yet to dive into. But the good news is, hey, the show's still going. We're not going to stop anytime soon. Not that I know of. And look, this is fun stuff. It's nerd stuff. It's geek stuff. It's all around great and awesome. So yeah, we're going to get to it. There's going to be a lot of other stuff to dive into. As we dive into Beverly Hills Cop Part 2. Yes, we've done Part 1. If you haven't listened and downloaded, you're doing life wrong. Go check it out. It's in the archives. You will enjoy the episode, I assure you, because man, we enjoyed doing it. Lots of cool stuff in that episode that you got to go listen to. You'll get our takes on that film. You're going to get our takes on this film as well. And man, you talk about making some money. Holy God. That first one made some serious cash. We'll get into that here today. We'll also talk about this film, of course, as well. So let's get into it, shall we? Beverly Hills Cop II is a 1987 American buddy cop action comedy film directed by Tony Scott, written by Larry Ferguson and Warren Scarron, and starring the one and only Eddie Murphy. It is the sequel, of course, to the 1984 film Beverly Hills Cop and the second installment in the Beverly Hills Cop film series. Eddie Murphy, of course, is Detroit Police Detective Axel Foley, and he reunites with a couple of guys from Beverly. You'll find out here today what we're talking about, and you'll find out about the plot and the story, of course. The release date for this film, May 19th, 1987 in Los Angeles, and then in the United States, May 20th, 1987. Running time, 103 minutes. A budget of $27 million. As you'll see, that's double the budget of the first film. The box office for this movie, hang on to something and hold on tight, $276.6 million freaking dollars. Not euros, not yen, dollars. And that's your lowdown for Beverly Hills Cop Part 2. Phil, when we covered the first one, we'll remind the people out there about the numbers for that because, man, was it just nuts? Yes, it was. Again, of course, that movie 84, the budget was $13 million, box office $316 million. Not quite the return we saw for the first one, but Phil, that first one was an aberration because, holy God, it just blew the doors off of everything. When was the last time you've seen Part 2? And what did you think coming out of it, watching it again now here for this show?
I hadn't seen it in a long time. I think we talked about this in the first installment that usually when there's a franchise, the third movie is the one that's on TV the most. It's the one that's kind of on cable a lot, so you see it a lot. So I've probably seen Beverly Hills Cop 3 more than any of them. But I think this movie's good. It doesn't have quite as much of the same charm and everything as the first movie, but it's still very funny. This is still Eddie at his best in a lot of ways. A lot more animated, a lot more impersonations this time around, but still great stuff.
A lot more animated. Brother, you said that because I remember during the first one, we both talked about his performance was low key. Not to the point where you didn't know it was Eddie, of course, but that, man, he almost came off like the most real person in the film, which is odd to say about the guy. I mean, he's super talented, but usually he's maybe not hamming it up, but like you said, over the top. But man, he is way more animated in this film. I don't think it's a detriment. What do you think about, speaking of this, what do you think about the performance he has here versus his performance in the first one in terms of compare and contrast?
I think the other movie kind of works better because he fits better in that movie. In
Hmm.
this movie, he's like running around in both these cities, going undercover, and so he's putting on like all of these different uh, impersonations, and somehow finding all these random job titles. Um,
Yeah.
like I mean, towards the end of the movie, when he runs up on the one guy and he's like, "Yeah, head of the Rap Association of America." Like all these random job titles, all these like places that he somehow figures out a way to get in. He's squatting in this house in Beverly Hills that he somehow manages to get in, and he's everything about everything he's doing in this movie just seems so outlandish. Um, it's a lot less realistic than the first movie, but I think it still works. I think it's still very funny.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. It does work. I mean, there are moments when it's like the rap thing is a good example. It's hilarious, but it totally, I don't want to say it doesn't fit, but it's almost like it's a weird time to be doing the humor.
Yo baby, yo.
Yeah. And the guy's kind of forced to go along with it. We have to also mention here, man, this character's ability to talk himself into anything, and it works every single time. And it's so great, Phil, because like the everyone around him is just such, I don't know if they're just dunderheads, if they're not all there, or if they're just easily manipulated. But dude, no one ever questions if he's actually telling the truth. It's hilarious.
Yeah, other than the two cops that he's running around, like they're
Of
like,
course.
this isn't your house, is it? This isn't your uncle's house, is it? Um, but yeah, no, there's several times he does things, and like the person he's talking to is so confused, but after a while, he's so persistent. They're just kind of like, well, wait, maybe he is telling the truth.
Right. Yeah, he's so sure of himself. He is so, that's what works. That's what does it, right? He's so unbelievably sure of himself.
Yeah,
With, and no one questions it.
yeah, like the scene where he's undercover towards the beginning of the movie. Um, but I think the idea that um at the very beginning of the movie, he's doing all the stuff that you think is the stereotypical buddy cop stuff. He's got the flashy suit, he's got Ferrari, he's got the shades. Um, he's doing all of that before he turns into Axel Foley that we know because he's undercover.
Hmm.
And the scene where he meets the guy to collect the credit cards, another guy comes in, he's like, "Yeah, you." I know you. And then he immediately flips it on him like he's the one that's wrong. He's like, yeah, no, this guy's a cop.
Yeah.
He's like, no, he's not a cop. Are you kidding me? No, this guy's Dirty Harry himself.
Yeah. He's so good at it that the guy that the dude's with actually starts to, he doesn't even question Eddie at all. He's just like, oh, okay. Like, oh, it's awesome.
Nah. Pork.
Yeah.
I smell the pork. You smell that?
Yeah. Oh my God. It's awesome. It's awesome. Yeah, he is, it's kind of a weird thing to say. This is Eddie Murphy. In part one, does that make sense? Like it's still Eddie, but it's not Eddie. This is flat out Eddie Murphy in this movie.
I feel like he's a lot more comfortable doing the comedy stuff in this movie. This is more his lane. This is more of his bag as a comedian.
Yeah.
And I think he does a good job in the first movie of actually acting and playing the role. But this time, it's also more of like Eddie as a comedian.
And plus, we've established who he is. We know who he is. We know that he was, I don't know, humble, modest, low key, the only guys he really doesn't like are criminals, of course, in the first one. Even then, he's being a smart mouth to them. But he's kind of a people person. He can talk to anybody, and he seems genuine when he's talking to the cops, and not like he's actually trying to pull the wool over anybody's eyes unless he just has to. So, like, I guess you lay the foundation for that character. Then in part two, you can go a little bit more looser with it, I suppose.
Yeah, I think the idea that he went to L.A. and he had this entire adventure in the first movie, and then we find out that he's still really good friends with all the cops there. Uh,
Yeah.
he knows the one cop's daughter. He's gone fishing with him, and when he calls him at the beginning of the movie, you get the idea that they talk like every week.
Yes. That scene is so good because Ronnie Cox is awesome. We established that in the first one. Everything the guy's ever done, whatever his job is, he's wholly believable. Uh, and man, I think that scene's important to establish, like you said, this personal relationship because what happens to Bogomil later, like, dude, legit, how do you live through that? Like, it was freaking vicious, man. Like, I thought he for sure was a goner at that point.
Yeah, I thought he was dead as well. That's why when we get to the scene where he's in the hospital and they're saying they just did surgery on him, I'm like, oh wait, he's alive. Wait.
Right. Yeah, I didn't see that coming either. Well, kids, as you know, if you checked out episode one, episode one, in other words, Beverly Hills Cop 1 here on the 6M, then you know, and you may know this already, they are currently working on part 4 for Netflix original. Yet to see what's going to happen with that. As of this recording, it has not been released. I'm actually really anxious to see it now after having gone back and revisited this franchise. The original cast is back for that, by the way, and we'll get into it here. Let's just go ahead and jump into it here, kids. Eddie Murphy, as we know, the great Eddie Murphy, Sir Eddie Murphy, in my book, man's a freaking living legend, folks. I don't know more you can say about him. But returning in part 2 here, Judge Reinhold as Detective Billy Rosewood, John Ashton as Sergeant John Taggart. Dude, if Taggart rubbed you the wrong way in part 1, those days are over because, like, John Ashton's got a way about him, Phil, that, like, number one, he feels like a real cop. Number two, you don't hate the guy. You can't even hate the guy at all because there's something about, I don't know if it sounds weird, but like the look in his eyes, he just comes across as being very genuine and like a good guy, despite his gruff exterior. I mean, he and Judge Reinhold are great coming back and actually more well established. What do you think about them here?
Yeah, you forgot 3. He looks like Gerald Ford. Um,
Very good.
uh, yeah, no, they're great this time around. Billy and his like fixation with Stallone movies, which is a hilarious tie back to the idea that Stallone was supposed to be the star of this franchise, and
Mm.
so he is like now like has this obsession with guns and like everything about like that kind of cop movie. It is very funny to see him like bungle his way through this movie trying to do these cool things. And I think he nails all of the humor of just how outlandish the situations are. Um, when he tells him to go get some wheels and he comes back with that big cement truck.
Yeah.
the most non-discreet thing he could have found. Like
And shout out to Chris Rock. Did you remember Chris Rock being in this movie?
oh, I forgot until I see his cameo.
Yeah, same.
Very 80s. The second you see him, oh yeah, it's very 80s movie. If you don't already get that hint from the music, the cars, Bridget Nielsen, no, this is a very 80s movie as well.
And Damon Wayans in part 1, and now Chris Rock in part 2. Freaking great. Uh, you got to think, and I don't know this for sure, but you got to think maybe Eddie has a hand in this, like aspiring comics on their way up. Yeah, dude, come on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, when he started making his own movies, it seemed like that was important to him to work with other comedians. We
Mm.
saw that with Harlem Nights. We saw that with Boomerang. Um, you also saw that with Coming to America. He always reached back to bring other black comedians up with him.
Yeah, good point. So yeah, and he tells him he tells him how much he gets to park the car. He said, "What am I supposed to do with these?" He said, "Park it. He's $50. Park it next to the limo." It's freaking great. Oh man, Ashton and Reinhold are back, of course, as we said, as Taggart and Rosewood, respectively. Ronnie Cox is back as Captain Andrew Bogomil, who takes 2 bullets. Is it 2 or 3? Maybe 2 or 3. I forget now.
Maybe 3.
Yeah, jeez. He lived though. Spoiler alert: he's still with us at the end of this film. Um, the fact that he and Eddie are friends is cool. The fact that Eddie is in the Detroit Lions jacket, which became signature Axel Foley, but was not present in the first film, but of course is I mean, it's here and in part 3. Yes, both films.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's cool. But yeah, the fact that he and Bogomil are friends is really cool. Again, it just speaks to the character of Axel Foley, of how he's approachable, he's genuine, you know what I mean, to a large degree. So I enjoyed seeing that. You mentioned Brigitte Nielsen, like you said, Phil, very 80s, very Rocky 4. And I'm gonna tell you something, man. Brigitte Nielsen probably catches way too much grief for whatever reason. I guess it's just, she's maybe trapped in a time warp with the 80s movies or whatever. I really enjoy Brigitte Nielsen's work, man. Like she's cold as ice in this movie. And dude, when she gets blown away in the end, even though it's a woman, it's like, yeah, she needs to get killed here. She needs to die. Like this is not going to be. We're going to arrest her and put her in prison, man. Like, what do you think about her in this film?
I mean, she's just immediately imposing.
Yeah,
Um, Beautiful woman as well, and I think she just fit all the aesthetics of the '80s. Like she was just perfect. Like she's just perfectly made for Hollywood. Like just all the stuff she's done, Red Sonja, like you said, the Rocky movie. She just looks like she belongs on a movie screen.
yeah, for
Um,
sure.
and so you're seeing her in this movie. Like the first second we see her, and she gets out of the car, and then she takes part in the robbery. She just looks the part. And so doesn't really matter what she does. I mean, of course, she has her way of delivering the lines, um, which I mean, she could take criticism because it's '80s and it's '80s acting, but uh, I think she's great. I think she's a great big heavy here as the main henchman.
Hmm.
I think it's an interesting choice to go with a woman as the main henchman always, and she does a great job. I think the way she plays off of Eddie, never at any point thinks anything he does is funny. Never even
Never.
like responds to it. She just kind of stares at him every time he does something wacky. Um, when he comes to the range and he's like trying to like he's just trying to like put on a charm. She's just like not buying any of it. It's just completely cutting straight through all of it. She does a great job at that.
Yeah, she's great. And good point, good call about the fact that she's a woman and she's the heavy. I'm sitting here and I'm going back in my head about things we've covered. How often have we covered a film where a woman is, I mean, you got to say she's the primary villain. She overshadows her boss by a country mile in this film.
Yeah, she's I mean, it's kind of like trying to think off the top of my head, like Kelly who was like that in X-Men 2, where
Mm,
she's the big heavy, she's the henchman, but she also overshadows Stryker in a lot of ways.
mm. Have we covered a film here that there's a woman as the primary villain? Because I honestly cannot. I don't think we have.
I don't think that we have, other than like I said, the big heavy or the henchman or like the main number two. Um, yeah, no.
Crazy. I mean, we have covered X3. We don't have to talk about it. But
Yeah.
we have. So I guess if you want to say Phoenix, for God's sake,
Uh, mm.
we were having so much fun and then I went and ruined it. My apologies.
But yeah, I mean, you're talking about missing the boom period where Bridget Nielsen would have been everywhere.
Yeah.
Can you imagine her in current Hollywood as a young actress?
Oh my
The amount of
God.
comic book movies she would be in.
Oh my God. Are you kidding me? Yeah, dude. Yeah. In my head, I'm already thinking what characters could she play? What comic book films would they cast her in now if she were in her 20s?
Uh,
That's a great question. Jeez.
it's a great question.
The White Queen?
Maybe I can see
Possibly.
that.
Ooh, man.
Um,
Yeah, there's some good options there, man. I mean, even though she's great, I don't know if I cast her as Black Widow. I think Black Widow is a lot more personable, a lot more human. Not that
mhm,
Brigitte Nielsen's not human, but she's very good at playing those icy roles.
yes.
So, man, that's a lot of what if right there. That's a fun rabbit hole to go down. But I'm with you. Yeah, what a time, what a time. And speaking of '80s characters, and I'm going to go ahead and throw him in there. I had forgotten about Gilbert Gottfried being in this movie.
Yeah. Iago himself, guys. If you heard. a certain time period,
Yes.
which is a joke about. I just saw on Twitter someone posted a meme that said something to the degree of name your favorite Eddie Murphy movie, and you can't name Shrek. And I was just like, but whose favorite Eddie Murphy movie is Shrek? Like,
Right.
what? And that's why I came with the Iago thing. Like, that's like saying that the thing Gilbert Godfrey from is being Iago.
Dude, we are surrounded by children.
Yeah, I know, but still, that's just insane to me to think that the only thing they know Eddie Murphy from is Shrek. That just seems impossible to me.
It does. It's freaking nuts. Like, how many guys in their or women in their 20s watch Saturday Night Live right now and have never went back and looked at older episodes with Eddie and Belushi and everything. That's mind blowing to me.
Yeah. Yeah, speaking of Black Widow, when she said it, she might not have been perfect casting for Natalie, but you find a way to make her the main bad guy in the Black Widow movie, because a movie where Scarlett Johansson is going up against Bridget Nielsen tells itself.
Oh, I really want that to happen now. It's not too late, man. We could see
It's
Brigitte
not too
Nielsen as
late.
a villain. I mean, obviously she's not doing her own stunts at this point, but like, I don't know. It's not too late, man. They can make something work for her. I think it should be great, dude. Hey, kids, Tom Clark here, and did you know the very podcast you're listening to right now is available on boinkstudios.com. BOINK, Boink Studios is the home of Tom Clark's Main Event, Tom Clark's 6M podcast, and Two Nations Under Ted, a Ted Lasso podcast. Visit the site today for links to every podcast platform, social media, special announcements, and a lot more. Check out the site and bookmark today, boinkstudios.com. I think that's the biggest takeaway so far is that Brigitte Nielsen, I don't know about stealing the show, but she's so good at what she does here.
She's so great. But this is before, she started doing all the reality TV stuff. I'm sure there was like all kinds of like legal stuff in intermingled in there as well.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think some of the jokes people throw on her, I think is because, like a lot of actors and actresses, people get overexposed. We know way too much about these people than we should.
Yeah, good call. Good call. But yeah, going back to Gilbert, man, the late, great Gilbert Gottfried kid, freaking a legend in his own right. And one of those guys who was blessed to have something that no one else had. No one else had. No one sounds like Chris Rock, and no one sounds like Gilbert Gottfried. And it's, unless you know what that means, then you don't know what that means. But dude, no one, he just one of a kind, man. I mean, it was good to see him here. I'd forgotten he was in this.
Yeah. Yeah, he's definitely one of those comedians that his delivery and his voice was such a big part of who he was. And you're right. Nobody sounds like Gilbert Godfrey, just like nobody sounds like Bobcat. Like, you're not going to find anybody in the world
Nope.
that sounds like Bobcat.
Very true. Very true. Yeah, for sure. And to modernize it a bit, no one sounded like Mitch Hedberg. Again, the late
Yeah.
great Mitch Hedberg. Dude, no one sounds like Mitch. Just clever with dumb jokes that shouldn't work, but they work because of his delivery. Like, oh,
Yeah. Yeah. Tracy Morgan's another one like that, where
yep,
nobody sounds like Tracy Morgan.
yep.
And some of his humor is kind of like, this just kind of like average working man humor, but it's just because of it's him, his voice, his mannerisms. Um, it shouldn't work, but it does.
Yeah. And listen. When you say the name Tracy Morgan, don't you automatically hear him talking in your head
Yes.
every time? And that look he gets on his face where I didn't do anything wrong. He's always got that look like, what's going on in here? Like, I love
He always had this look on his face like
it.
he's confused as to how he got here and why we're actually sitting and listening to him. Like, why am I actually famous? Like, you guys actually care about this stand up? Okay, cool.
He was on, there's a weird show. I don't think it's even on there anymore, but it was like the guys that installed the fish aquariums.
What?
Yeah. Yes. It was a thing. It was one of those, like I say reality show, but you know what I mean. Not a competition thing, but it was just, it followed these guys and they had their own aquarium business and they did celebrities. Like Shaq wanted a huge tank and they did his, and they had several celebrities on there during the course of the show, and he was one of them. And he had an octopus. And dude, Morgan was there through the whole show. Like, you didn't meet him in the beginning, and you didn't see him again till the end, to the reveal of the tank. He's through the entire episode, just hanging out, just chilling, being a normal guy, like playing along, and just being himself. And I'm like, man, if you ever got to meet and hang out with a celebrity, you should be lucky enough to meet a guy that is just a normal dude that doesn't put on airs, as
Yeah.
my mom would say, and just is a normal guy, man.
Yeah, Tracy Morgan definitely strikes me as one of those guys that you could just see him walking down the street somewhere.
Oh,
Like
for
just
sure.
randomly just like walking somewhere and he's just like walking around like I don't know, just walking like a grocery store and he's just like walking around like, yeah, just trying to get some eggs.
Yeah. I tried to do an impression, but I'm sure I'd butcher it, so I won't try.
Yeah, just trying to get some eggs out here,
Yeah.
carton of milk.
Great stuff. Great stuff. So again, legends in this movie, kids. Dean Stockwell. He's, I don't want to say substantial role, but it's a pretty high profile role as one of the bad guys as Charles Kane. Again, I forgot Dean Stockwell was in this movie. And if you're a Quantum Leap fan, you know Dean for sure.
Yeah. Definitely the thing watching both Beverly Hills Cops movies back to back is this was a very big 80s archetype thing with cop movies. All of them have to very clearly look like the bad guy. There's no detective work. This guy looks like he's up to no good. The second you see him, he just has this sinister look on his face. The second you see him.
Oh my God, no kidding. He's got that. He's got like a pencil thin mustache, which also says villain to me in this. And plus, yeah, he's got a villain mustache. And Dean Stockwell's just got a face as an actor that you can't trust him. It always surprised me that he ended up. I don't want to say surprised, but like he was never a villain in Quantum Leap, which was interesting to me. But yeah, it was good to see him in this movie. So Paul Reiser is back, kids. If you saw the first one, you know him as Detective Jeffrey Friedman. He's got a much bigger role this time. Phil, in on what planet does Paul Reiser just lift his collar up, put dark glasses on, and pass for Eddie Murphy driving around in the sports car through the city of Detroit? I'm just asking.
There is a part in the movie where you can tell that he is embodying this undercover role and trying to act like Axel.
Yeah.
And he gets on a payphone and he tries to fool somebody in the same way Axel does. And he does the same kind of voice that Axel does. It is so funny. It's one of the funniest parts of this movie to me.
That's when he was trying to do the inspector's voice, right?
Yes.
Oh, so good.
He does it in the same way that Axel does it. It is so funny.
I like Paul Reiser, man. I've always been a fan of that guy. So, yeah, it was good to see that he had a little bit of a bigger role here, honestly. Speaking of the inspector, Inspector Douglas Todd, portrayed by Gil Hill, who was inspector in Detroit. It's the true story, kids. Look him up. You'll never believe it when you read it, but it's 100% true. Mr. Hill, no longer with us, passed away in 2016, the age of 84. He was an inspector in the police force there in Detroit, Michigan. The guy had, I mean, you got to go look him up. It's crazy, kids. We covered this in the first one, but he was involved in the investigation surrounding the Atlanta child murders in '79 that resulted in the trial and conviction of Wayne Williams. Notorious trial and arrest and everything that happened as a result of that. This guy had a part in bringing that guy to justice. Thank goodness. But yeah, a legend in his own right. Man, he's back here. Looks like he hasn't changed a bit. He's still pissed off at Axel. Is he a cliche at all to you, Phil, or does he? Is it still okay that he is gruff and he's that grizzled inspector here?
I think it's hilarious that in the first movie, there's this dynamic in Detroit where he has to deal with the stereotypical angry chief, and he goes to L.A. and in Beverly Hills, everybody is so nice. You see that everybody's made friends with in the first movie. Like nobody in that police station treats him like he gets treated at home. And then this time around, the new chief in LA is more like his chief at home. And it's such a funny
Right.
dynamic to see how they're reacting to it in Beverly Hills. And he's just kind of used to it at home. But yeah, no, Chief is very stereotypical in Detroit. But I can't imagine anybody else playing a role because he brings such a realness to it. He brings such a he brings such an authenticity that it would have been hard to duplicate. Um, like there's scenes where he's chewing Axel out and he's just going off on him about how much money he's pouring into this case, and
Yeah.
it is just so funny because he sounds like somebody that you know. He just sounds like someone's dad that you know that's complaining about how much money he spends on the light bill.
Yeah, and the car and everything. Like it was over $100,000 for the car.
Yeah. Oh, he tries to correct him about how much the car costs at one point. He just stares at him like he wants to start choking him. It's so funny.
Oh, it's great. Yeah. Speaking of the other captain in Beverly Hills, we're speaking about Alan Garfield, who portrayed Chief Harold Lutz. He's actually no longer with us. We lost him on April 7th, 2020, at the age of 80 due to complications of COVID-19, unfortunately. He is so good here. He's unbearably frustrating. He's the wall, Phil. Like you can't just have friendly cops who are all trying to find the bad guy. You got to have one dude they just keep bumping into. Like, and this guy's it in this movie, man. He's absolutely it. He's great because you just want to punch him in the face through the whole film. You don't know. I don't understand. Like these guys are doing your job. They're going to make you look like a hero once they bring these people to justice, and all you're doing is yelling at them. But he's great here, man. It works.
Yeah, he is great in this role. He is insufferable, but
Yeah.
he is great at what he does.
Insufferable is a great way to put it. Yeah. Too much? Is it too much?
No, I think it's supposed to nail home that he is the big obstacle to solving this case, and that everybody else is kind of doing their job. Like when you see all of the legwork that went into solving this case at the beginning of the movie that Axel is trying to retrace. Um, yeah, it's just kind of like, why are you yelling at everybody? And it kind of seems like they were onto something. They were kind of ready to solve this case.
Yeah, it seems like there's one person getting in their way, and it's not the bad guys, it's him, which is nuts. But again, if you're going to do it, if you're going to do a character like that, you got to do it right. So it makes sense that it's him, and it makes sense that it's, again, that it's working there. Um, those are your main characters there, kids. We did not mention Jurgen Prochnow as Maxwell Dent. Great villain. He's also I keep using the word legend. I don't mean to throw that around as if it doesn't mean anything, but a legend in his own right as well. But Phil, he's very much overshadowed by Brigitte Nielsen here, isn't he?
Yes.
At some point, it's like, do we even really need him here? Like,
Yeah, he's kind of just like the bad guy that is behind everything.
yeah,
He's the mustache twirling bad guy that is the boss of everything.
yeah. Paul Guilfoyle, and if you know CSI, you know Paul Guilfoyle. He was Captain Jim Brass in the show for 14 years, actually. So he's here as Nikos Tomopoulos. So he's here. Robert Ridgely as Mayor Ted Egan in the film. We also get Alice Adair as Captain Bogomil's wife. And we also get his daughter,
It's Jan, isn't it?
Jan. Yeah, that does
Jan or
sound
Jane?
something like that. In the small time that we get her, a role like that, I think you could like ham it up to the point of it being, I don't know. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but like it doesn't feel like that to me at all. It just feels like it works and it's not too very much over the top. But I think it's fine. And then I love how Eddie tries to comfort her by telling her that I guess I got shot like this in Detroit all the time. He'll be fine.
Axel.
But I mean, he again, you got to imagine that that she knows him and is comfortable with him. Alice Adair is his daughter. Excuse me, I said she was his wife. There you go, Alice Adair as Janet Bogomil. Boom. We also get Hugh Hefner here, Phil.
Yeah,
Man, the '80s references are just crazy.
all over the place. The scenes at the mansion are very funny. The guy that is for some reason randomly um walking around while the other girls are playing volleyball, and he's like dancing in between them.
Oh, it's great.
So 80s. The party itself, Eddie coming in
Yep.
and being Eddie in a room full of women. Um, both both these first two movies are very horny.
Yeah.
He they go to a strip club in both those movies, and then you get this scene in in the mansion afterwards. So
No kidding. And also, look, not for nothing. It's a weird body part to point out here, but see, Teal Roberts is the stripper in the scene that you're talking about.
yeah,
It's funny that the one of the things that jumped out at me about this is going to sound weird about her body was her shoulders. Dude, I'm not kidding you, man. Go back and just freeze frame on her shoulders. Dude, I'm telling you right now, she could have picked me up
what?
in a fireman's carry. I guarantee it. I'm telling you, man. I mean, you just know that someone's in shape and, that she lifts weight. You can just tell. I don't know. It's a weird thing to take away from a strip scene. I'm just saying.
Can't say that I noticed that she had well defined shoulders, sir. Um, but yeah, very horny movie. I mean, the
Yeah.
initial scenes in this movie, when he goes and pulls up on the guy that's doing the credit card scams, he's got the woman next to him, and he immediately makes fun of him. He's like, "Where you find this woman at? Yeah, get over there with Titty Woman."
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's so good. Again, talking himself into anything and into anywhere and out of any situation. It works every time. There is the majority of your cast, kids. Tom Bauer also is Russ Fielding. So he's here as well. And I think we've covered just about everybody here. Did you know Tiny Lister's in this film?
I'm trying to think, where was he at in the movie?
That's an excellent question. He was Orvis.
Is it a bouncer or something?
He must have been like a bouncer or henchman. How in the world do you miss 7 foot tall Tiny Lister? Because, buddy, I did. It's messed up. Yeah, he's in this as well. But yeah, there's your cast, kids. So the story. Once again, Phil, we got bad guys doing bad things, but this time it's a little bit different. It's they're robbing, like they're taking jewelry and they're taking money, and she's got it timed. She times the thieves, the crew, when they go in and do their thing. Um, and once again, Axel is drawn back to this to California, to Beverly Hills, for the sake of the movie, of course. What do you think? How do we feel about the plot here for this movie, man? Is it a typical 80s bad guy, drug running kind of thing, gun running kind of thing? Is that what we're talking about here?
Yeah, I think the plot in itself, if you're looking for a reason to get him back in um, Beverly Hills, because the first movie he goes to Beverly Hills to solve a crime because his
Hmm.
friend was murdered. So we've already got this character note from him that he cares very much about his friends. He's very
Mm-hmm.
loyal. And so I think it makes perfect sense that um, if he felt like the friends he made in LA in the first movie were in jeopardy and something happened to him, he'd come out and run to save the day again.
Yeah, that's well said. Yeah, that's well said. So yeah, he again, humble guy, loyal to his friends. It's funny we did not get the character from the first film back here. I guess there was no reason to have her back here. Um, I'm look, dude. I'm hazy on the third film. Is she back for part three? I think.
No, there's a different woman that's like the main woman he's talking to. Um, why am I drawing a blank on her name? I'm seeing her face, but it's not the woman you're talking about.
Lisa Eli Bacher as Jenny Summers.
That's the woman from the first movie.
Yeah,
Oh no, it's a different actress.
yeah.
This actress is black, if I remember correctly.
Oh, okay.
I cannot remember her name again. Like seeing her face and everything, but just
Again, I think everything works here. I go back to one of my initial thoughts as we started this episode is the fact that he's a little bit more. He's definitely Eddie Murphy here, which is fine. I don't think it's too much over the top. I think there's a big difference between Eddie Murphy being Eddie Murphy and Will Ferrell being Will Ferrell. Not to pick on Will Ferrell, but you know what I mean, right? Like Eddie can go to the edge and not lose the audience. But I believe, at least for me, sometimes Will goes to the edge, or even Jim Carrey in his prime goes to the edge, and it kind of feels like he loses some of the audience when he goes that far.
Yeah, I can see that.
But yeah, I don't get that with him here at all. So it's crazy, man. So in terms of, again, we talked about the numbers that the first film did, and they doubled the budget here for this film because obviously, why wouldn't you? Because the first one is such a monster freaking hit that, of course, you're going to get much more money for part two. And it doesn't quite make the same, but still it's a runaway hit here, 276.6 million on a budget of 27 million, as we said. Tom Clark 6M podcast is sponsored in part by Radius Law Group. Every day, Radius helps individuals, families, small businesses, and nonprofit organizations throughout North Carolina, Florida, and Pennsylvania resolve their legal issues by providing effective legal counsel in the areas of estate planning, as well as elder law and Medicaid. Radius Law holds the radical belief that working with a lawyer can indeed be enjoyable. So give them a call at 1-800-519-5667 for more information and tell them that Tom Clark 6M podcast sent you. How do the two movies stand side by side, dude, to you? Like, do you enjoy part two better than you did part one, or is it the other way around?
I mean, for my money, I still think that the initial Beverly Hills Cop is the best one of the franchise. I think that this one is good. I think that it's funny. But you can see the further the franchise goes on, that they're trying to stretch this thing out as much as possible because they're making money.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow. Brother, I don't know if you know this. On Rotten Tomatoes, the film has a 46% rotten rating.
Did not know that. I could have kind of guessed that it wasn't as well received as the first movie.
I just don't know if I don't know if I knew that coming. I or saw that coming. I don't get that. Compared to the first one, which has an approval rating of 83%.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of really surprising to me, to be honest. I did not see that coming. It was nominated for Academy Award for Best Original Song. Shakedown. Shakedown, breakdown, shake. Are you a Bob Seger guy there, Phil?
No. I thought when you said best song, I was like, is it Better Way? Because Better Way plays a few times throughout this movie. It plays over the closing credits.
Oh, well done. Well done. Yeah.
Which, I mean, again, very 80s. Better.
Oh,
Yeah, when
my
the
God.
first time Better
Big
Way
time.
plays in the movie and I was watching it this time around, I was like, boy, you can't get more 80s than this song, the vocals and everything.
Oh, 100%. Oh, dude, for sure. Like, we got a lot of Pointer Sisters and like Patti LaBelle in the first movie. I think it was Patti. But
Yes.
yeah, so like, again, very 80s sounding. Nothing against those ladies, but like very 80s sounding with the synthesizers and the electric drums and everything, drum machines. And then again, you got 80 sounds here as well. But buddy, I'll tell you something. That Harold Faltermeyer's doing his thing again, Phil, with that Axel F song. Holy Lord.
Yeah, come on, man. One of the most recognizable themes to any movie ever.
And you'll never hear it the same way again once you see that spot on Family Guy with the time travel episode.
Oh, the one with Cleveland, like with the beaded jacket on, and he's dancing.
Yes. Oh, and Peter's going, oh my God. It is so good. Once you hear it, you'll never unhear it. Because remember, he keeps going back to that party and dancing.
Yes, every time Cleveland's there doing the same exact dance, he's wearing the same clothes and everything. It's funny.
Brian's like, Peter! He's like yelling at him. Peter gets easily distracted. Oh. Yeah, that's classic. My God. But yeah, you're right. It's one of the most recognizable film scores or songs of all time. Just freaking great. Back to the Bob Seger stuff. I think at his best, the stripped down, if you've ever heard his stuff live, like live in concert, really good band. Like they always sound really good together. And dude, Seger started in the 60s.
Wow.
Yes, dude. There's clips of him on black and white on TV with two other guys. And he's got like long hair. He's really young. He's wearing those 60s clothes, with the stripes on them and everything. So yeah. But that man, that song, geez. That song did some stuff. It was number one on the Billboard Hot 100. It was the only time Seeger hit that spot. That's crazy. Went to number one in Canada as well. Nominated for both the Academy Award for Best Original Song and Golden Globe. Lost both awards to, guess what? Dirty Dancing's I've Had the Time of My Life.
Not that surprising when you think of that time period and what Dirty Dancing was.
Very true. And at the 60th Academy Awards, Shakedown was performed by Little Richard. Now I've got to see that. Are you kidding me? I got to look that up now. I bet that's great. So we know part three is coming of this film franchise, as we said when we started the show off here today. Let me ask you this before we get to part three. Should it have been 1 and 2 and you stop?
I don't know if there's enough to stretch this to 3 movies, and I would definitely say that 3 is my least favorite of the trilogy so far. We'll see what 4 does. I do think it's funny. When I watched this movie, I watched it on Paramount Plus, and I was immediately thinking about the announcements for Beverly Hills Cop 4, and I was like, "Hey, man, how did Netflix get this and Paramount didn't? Because all the other Beverly Hills Cop are on Paramount Plus." So I gotta imagine like Paramount was looking around like, how do we get X'd out of this? How's the fourth one over there on Netflix? I'm assuming it has to do with the distribution rights or something that Eddie signed at some point with. Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't the Dolomite movie straight to Netflix?
I think you're right. That sounds right. Yeah.
So it might have been some kind of distribution deal where he's got like 2 movies with Netflix or something, or I don't know.
You're right. First three films distributed by Paramount, while Netflix is set to distribute the fourth film. Yeah, I don't have an explanation in front of me, but that is interesting.
Yeah. And Coming to America, wasn't that straight through Amazon Prime?
Yes, yes, yes. It was straight to streaming.
Yes.
Dude, can I ask you a question? Don't you think Beverly Hills Cop deserves a big screen release? Why are we doing this?
I think that it does, but I think it's one of those movies that stayed in production hell for so long that they're just like,
Mm,
get this thing out in whatever way we can, because as we talked about on last episode, this almost turned into a TV show where they recast, and it almost turned into, I think, a spinoff where they recast. I think Kevin Hart was attached to the role at one point. I know Brandon T. Jackson was attached to the TV role.
that's right.
But this is just one of those things where it's gone through so many different iterations and different projects where they've been trying to bring this franchise back. So it kind of feels like, hey, let's get whatever we can at this point. I already signed a distribution deal with Netflix, so why not? Let's do it here.
Hmm. I got to be honest, man. I enjoy the streamers. I do. But I don't know, man. I feel like this should have been big screen. I think, honestly, I'm really enjoying diving back into this franchise, and I'm thinking I think it would have been cool to go to the big screen to see Eddie Murphy in a Beverly Hills Cop movie after it's been, oh my god, since I was younger than a teenager when the first movie came out. Like, I think that would have been cool, and now I don't get that, and it kind of
Yeah.
sucks, man.
Yeah, I think there's something to people that came after the era to be able to see an installation of one of these big franchises and movies for the first time. Like I've talked at length about going to see Star Wars for the first time as a fan, because the initial trilogy I didn't get to see any of it in a movie theater.
Right, right.
So getting to see my first Star Wars movie in a movie theater was an experience. But with that said, do you really think people are going to show up to see Beverly Hills Cop like that? Do you think it would have done well box office wise?
It's a good question. I mean, Eddie Murphy's enough of a draw for my age and your age, but
Yeah, but this is
I
a
don't know.
franchise that the last one was what, 93 or something like that, 93 or 94.
It sounds right.
Yeah,
Beverly Hills
we're
Cop, yeah,
looking
94, yeah.
we're looking at almost 30 years.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so old. I'm so effing old, dude. Yeah, um, that's fair. And look, the only real answer to that, Phil, honestly, is you young it up. You young it up. But from what I'm seeing from the cast list, they didn't young it up.
No. I think that's another reason why they decided to put on a streamer, cuz all of the properties where they were trying to get it on TV or push it as a big movie to put in theaters, there was always a younger guy attached to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fair. Well, I listen. I'm still in the bag for it. I'm anxious to see part four. Um,
Are you saying that Murphy is one of the six M's?
oh, wow, good pull. Hey, man, listen, we've covered him. We did the Nutty Professor, and we did. Let's see. We're going to do the trilogy here, so that's 480 Murphy films. We did Trading Places. That's 5. It's not bad. We've never done 48 Hours. That's something we could tackle. It is a classic actually, but different tone for Eddie. But
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. Well, kids, there you have it. There's that Beverly Hills Cop film, but not the first one, the second one. If you thought, because listen, we have been known to stop at one movie before, depending on what the franchise is. We're like, yeah, we're not doing part two, but we didn't stop at part one. And guess what? We're not stopping at part two. You're going to get a part three. And listen, let's call it right now. You'll probably get a part four as well. I think we could cover part four here on the show. I'd be interested in doing that. So, great thing about the format for the 6M kids, as you know, is we can, whatever comes to us is what we talk about. Doesn't have to be in the news. It doesn't have to be timely. It could be 100 years old. Doesn't really matter. We can still talk about it. As long as it falls under the category of the 6M, which is a bunch of stuff, we can cover it here. So, listen, before we take this home, so you said that part one is your favorite of the three. Was there anything about this film that could have put it over the top for you, or you just think did it just miss the mark in, I don't want to say in a bad way, but it just didn't hold the same charm as the first one maybe for you?
I don't think it really missed the mark. I think it's funny. I can see why some people didn't enjoy it as much. I think it's still an enjoyable movie. I think Eddie is still incredibly funny in it. I think when you get moments like him playing off other people and doing some of the comedy stuff that he does best, he's really good here. So this is a funny movie. It is very enjoyable, but um, for me, it doesn't have that same like appeal as the first movie in a lot of
Mhm.
ways. I think the first movie, it could be just because it was the first, and it could be so much nostalgia attached to the first one. I still think the first movie is the best one.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the first one, dude, for sure. No doubt about it. Like you said, I'm with you. I did enjoy this, but at the same time, I get where you're coming from. Yeah, I get where you're coming from for sure. Well, kids, there you have it. Part two's in the books. Part three coming your way soon. Just stay tuned for that, and you will. And once you subscribe and download, of course, you get access to all the new stuff and the archives as well. Let's put a pin in this, Phil. Give me your last word on Beverly Hills Cop 2.
I think it is a very good movie. It might not be the breakout show that it was the first time around. I think the second movie is Eddie at the height of his comedic powers in a lot of ways. Um, but boy, if the first movie proved that he can be a leading man and he can, sell major tickets to a movie, this one still proved that. This one still proved that this guy still had the juice as a leading man, and he was just starting. He was just getting started.
Mm. Yeah, 100%. Like we said, there's nothing like Murphy in his prime. He did some interesting stuff later, a lot of stuff that didn't work, some stuff that did, but Murphy in his prime is something to watch because the potential is limitless for sure. Big fan of this movie. I think I'm with Phil here, though, kids, that I think part one's better. I think I enjoyed part one better, but as a sequel, as a follow up, I don't understand the 46% rating. I think people are high. Um, Stop huffing paint fumes, folks. I don't know what more to tell you. Nowhere in my book is this movie that low, but that's me. We'll see. We'll see how we feel about part three. We'll get there. Be patient. No worries. Get there soon enough. And then, of course, as I said, we'll hit part four when it gets here as well. But in the meantime, that, my friends, is Beverly Hills Cop 2. Hey, thanks for listening to the show. Check out our social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at 6M Podcast. We'll see you next time.